Hello and welcome to the Monday show on Our Game. Myself, Michael Verney, in the hot seat today. And with Championship just kicking off last weekend, we've got one of the best free transfers in the history of the GA. We've got a Stapleton upgrade. Delighted to be joined by former Tipperary star and the better of the two Stapletons, Paddy Stapleton. Paddy, how are you?
Well, I'm not too bad, Michael. How are you?
No, there's no question you are the better of the two, Paddy. Absolutely none. Don't worry.
Okay, but I don't think we're talking about like the Clifford brothers here. So, yeah, better. I would say comfortably better than the other one, but that is not saying a whole pile. So, I'd like to see upgrade today. Journalistically or media-wise, I don't know, but hurling-wise, I think so.
How are you getting on anyway, Paddy? It was a mad weekend, all told. We'll go into the nuts and bolts of everything now in a couple of minutes. But geez, like Championship fairly started with a bang, didn't it?
Did, yeah. Geez, I really, really enjoyed yesterday now. Yesterday was, even the weather picking up, a bit more of a crowd. Like, we'd like to see more like the old knockout system. Bit more of a crowd, the sun shining. Even in Borrisley, there was cars passing through like they would be every summer for Championship. So, it kicked off so much yesterday in terms of that Waterford-Limerick match. Obviously, we'll get into it. But to me, that's what it's all about. It felt like knockout. And that's what we want out of the Championship. We had enough league, enough shadow boxing, and yeah, brilliant. Great weekend.
100%. We'll go into all the details of all the games in a couple of minutes. We're delighted to be brought to you, as always, by orgaretro.com. The cream of the crop as regards replica jerseys. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. I'm done in an Offaly jersey this morning. I thought I was, after drawing the short straw, been sent to Glenisco Connor Park yesterday, but I got a good deal as it turned out. Our first Championship win over Meath in 23 years, and we're heading back to Croke Park next Sunday. But Paddy, we'll get straight into it. You were down in Ennis yesterday, and just even the atmosphere, even in the first half, like that was, as we said a couple of minutes ago, that was proper Championship, and it was just kind of goals galore. Where do you want to start on it? Obviously, a great win for Tipperary, number one.
Yeah, a great win for Tipperary, but I don't think you can start anywhere but the three early goals. The three goals. And, you hate coming down on a debutant keeper, and they certainly weren't all his fault. But just that was, if you go into a Championship match and you're essentially 9 points down from probably 3 mistakes, it's very difficult to win any of them. Because at some stage, Tipperary were always going to probably make their own chances, because none of those chances were really a formulated plan by Tipperary. So to get 3 goals like that completely hamstrung Clare throughout the tie. And as I thought they played brilliant for a long time, Clare. Really had some great periods, but it's draining on you to know that you're right. Okay, we're 4 or 5 points down with the score after score after score to get level. And Tipperary did very well. 2 goals by Clare before half time, but Tip weathered the storm. But I think those 3 goals are just, it's so hard to pull it back no matter how well Clare played throughout the match.
And just the Cahill mentality. There was even when there was a sniff for the last one, for Jake Morris's third one, I should say. Like, was there a goal on when he picked up the ball? There probably was, but it was all that was in his head. It's that change of mentality almost as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think you'll rarely ever lose that in that situation by going at the last man. So Paul Flanagan was there now. I think Paul would be disappointed in terms of, you don't have to drag a lad to the floor, but he's getting fouled. Like, he's, yourself now. He'll shimmy wherever he wants, and he might actually create a gap to get by me, but he's not getting by me. So Paul will be disappointed with that. But that's Jake Morris. In fairness to Jake Morris, there's some criticism of him at times and maybe ball winning, but when he's bearing down on goal, when he's facing the goals running towards it, he's a powerful man. He is powerful. Great step, as we see. And what I always love about Jake Morris, low finish.
Yeah.
Patrick in the semi-final or quarter-final of the league, or whatever that was, the last round game, buried every one of them low, and he hops it. Really, really hops it. Doesn't hit it low where the keeper is, because they're great to save them ones that are just half volley off the ground. He'll hit it maybe a yard before the keeper and it could bounce anywhere. So goal, yeah, most players wouldn't have went for it, but that's his mentality. But also, when he was with Liam Cahill and Mikey Beavens with the minors and Tip 20s, that was their mentality. So that's come up through his lifetime with Tip as a young player.
that was obviously, you had 6 championship defeats before that, and to go to Ennis, and I know you have a good record in Ennis in recent years, which is kind of peculiar because Clare generally have a very good record there against everybody else. But how important is it to get a win on the board the first weekend and not to be staring down, the barrel of a gun in round 2?
I think it's huge. Because to me, sport and hurling, whatever sports you're playing, is before you do anything physical, it's a mental game. And you're just putting yourself under pressure. Then you go down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh in a couple of weeks' time. And, if Cork get on well next week and they start off well, now you're under serious pressure going down there. And I think Páirc Uí Chaoimh, a wide open space. I think Cork have potential to open a team like Tipperary up in different sectors. So you could be looking at 2 defeats in a row, and then you have 2 matches left. One of them against Limerick, who I'm sure would revel in knocking Tipperary out of the championship.
Any team would revel in knocking Tipperary out of the championship. Paddy, to be fair.
This is the problem. We're in the unfortunate position of bordering every other hurling county nearly, so we're in trouble that way. But hey, look, anyone, as you said, anyone would, but it would have been really tough. So now you're looking at, okay, bit of confidence down to Cork. What we tried in Ennis worked against a very good and athletic team, albeit with a couple of poor goals given away by Clare, but it gives them something to hang on to. And they have lots to work on. Tipperary have a lot to work on. I certainly think their puck outs, facing puck outs and the attacking puck outs, I would be a little bit worried about them. But, their play was quite good. Their interplay was very good. Up front, made it stick at times, but there's still a lot to work on, I would say. And I wouldn't say the management would be under any other illusion.
A great situation to be in, winning a game, no more than John Kiley and Limerick, winning a game, getting their points on the board and having probably stick to beat your team. But just fly through a couple of comments here that are after coming in. Pa just says, those three goals were the difference. Clare never back within 3 at any stage. Next one in there from Richard Hogan. 2 of those goalkeeping mistakes cost them 6 points and they lost by 5. That's the bare maths of it, really, when you think about it. And there's probably something in their head where you're always thinking, can we really win a game when we're after? You've been in that situation as well, Paddy. You're just thinking, and no matter how hard you try, you're always trying to bridge the gap, but they're always there. So that was a difficult one. One Stop Auto says Clare's goalie was terrible. Difficult one for him.
They're coming down hard on him, Michael. And I try not to come down too hard on him. It was his debut, I think. And the first goal is a real tricky one, that sideline in. But I think, I'm not a goalkeeper, but I would think in a ball like that, you have to primarily concentrate on the ball that's coming as if it's not getting a touch.
Totally.
Because the touch could put it anywhere. And that's now to look at the gods if he's able to react. So I suppose that maybe it's inexperience and maybe just in that situation. It was a crap situation to be in after a couple of minutes your first match. One of the worst sidelines coming in ever. And, then, taking the ball into contact in an inter-county game, okay, you have your outliers. Owen Murphy's Cummins was the fastest man on the Tip team up to 37 years of age. So you have outliers, but in general, a goalie needs to get away from contact and get it free. And just a couple of inexperienced moments. And it's obvious he made a few mistakes. I hate coming down hard on him, but when you put that 9 point, John Collin made the mistake for the third, but when you put those 9 points in front of a team as a barrier, it's very, very difficult to play well enough to win over the 70 minutes. So, but it is, I think people need to hold up and in too,
Yeah, the one thing I would say about the second goal is, especially when you're after making a mistake, like he had about 15 yards of space. To me, there's times like, if you hit a sharp puck out and there's a goal off it, like I don't know if you go with a high risk sharp puck out straight, you just settle things a small bit. So to me, that was a long delivery, that puck out, and I think maybe you're trying to be a bit too smart. The one for Conlon kind of just went over his head. You're thinking it might have been safe out there, even if it was turned over. But as we said, Jake Morris was in that sort of mood. Paul Cage said Shane made a great point last night. Shane rarely makes great points, but he made one last night apparently. That Munster teams are getting shafted in this current format. 2 class Munster teams out while 1 mediocre Leinster team qualify. How do we fix it? Now, I talked about that before. Like it's mad. Like Kilkenny can experiment quite a bit during the Leinster Championship, if you get me, and all the teams can. Like Lee Chin would have played Saturday if that was a Munster Championship game, probably, because he would have had to, because they would have been in serious trouble if not. I'll just fly through a couple of other quick comments here. Boom Boom 43 says, after the sneering about Jake Morris being closer to the Ennis Road than the goals a couple of years ago, it was interesting to see him score a goal from a further distance yesterday. It surely was indeed. Another one in from Richard Hogan. Why would you start such an inexperienced goalkeeper in such a massive game? Now, he had been very good in Munster League and in the league games I'd seen as well. And it's a difficult one when it's probably a 50-50 call between Quilligan, who'd played the last year or so, and has been generally good, but maybe prone to the odd mistake, and a guy who looks like he's coming on the scene. And I know you're obviously defending the keeper, and I'd be the same, Paddy, but I was looking at kind of Spurs yesterday even, and they obviously conceded a heap of goals early, and Lloris was taken off at half time. Was there ever, like, it's a difficult one, it's a real blow to a guy's confidence if you pull him off, I think, long term, like. So in fairness to Lohan, I think he probably did right by his player, I'd say, by keeping him on.
He did right by his player, but it was a thought in my head, being honest with you. Just not because I didn't think he was good enough. I think, he's well good enough. He's going to be a very good keeper, I'm sure, for Clare. But just in terms of trying to get points in that game.
Yeah.
And it was back to 4. It was at halftime, it was back to 4 points.
Yeah.
So it was very doable at that stage. And I just felt a couple of his decisions, one particular in the first half after the 3 goals went in, he got a ball and he looked like he panicked, and he was over on the right hand end line and he just poked it into the air out. So I said, he's probably not in his relaxed mindset. And then into the second half, Paul, to me it proved, that proved right, because there was one high ball came in and Jason Ford put up and flicked it down, and it just flicked across the square. I don't know if you remember that, but Quilligan was kind of standing there just looking at it. So he didn't make a play on the ball. He didn't go up to flick it away. He didn't kind of go. He just stood there, and just by the grace of God, the ball flicked across the goals from Jason Ford. And then there was another play where Flanagan popped it back to him, and again was kind of in panic mode, and he flicked it as hard as he could, nearly at Flanagan's feet, and it jumped by him and out for a sideline for Tipperary again. So I was thinking at half time, possibly bring him out, but as you said, you could be absolutely crucifying him for all time trying to play with Clare after that. I mean, your first day out and you get taken off as a goalkeeper is horrendous, but it would have been a serious thought I would have had, just because he didn't look like he settled after the 2 mistakes, maybe 3 mistakes.
Paddy, just from a Tipperary point of view, what do you make of this one, lads? What's the story with the numbers? All numbers going in alphabetical order. That shouldn't be allowed. P1SS take on supporters. Like it looked awful in the program yesterday. I think there's pros and cons to it. I can understand with this GA ruling now, where you have to have like Tipperary wouldn't have had the team named by the time they sent the team to Crow Park, and by the time it was announced to the public on Friday at around lunchtime. What do you make of it now? Is there a bit of consistency that lads know numbers are irrelevant? Like you always liked wearing 2 or 4, even if if you were
28,
maybe. But if you were starting and you were wearing 20, I don't know. Right. It's not the same, and you'd be definitely looking to swap that jersey at the end of the game. There's not sure.
There'll be no starting lad at Soffit with you. I can remember that much.
Exactly. You'd be going over to some lad who hadn't got a big game time and see if you swap. Will you swap this York? What do you make of it? Good and bad points.
Look, I want 1 to 15 kept there. I think there are certain things, like I'm not a complete traditionalist. Like I don't think so on stuff that I think is detrimental to the game. Like I was a supporter of the split season. I was a supporter of bringing the All Ireland back a little bit in the year. So because I think it's important for the game. Whether it'll work or not, we don't know. Numbers, I think it looks well. I think it's what distinguishes GA in terms of their numbers. And like rugby, I think there's a real distinction in it, in getting your number. And if I think back on tip teams, Conor Mahoney, I think a number 6, Conor Mahoney, that kind of way. Owen Kelly, number 13. Like you think of these things, and they live in their mind. And for kids, I think growing up, it's very, very special to look in and see whatever position you love. that's who he is. TJ Reid is 11 in my head. Like even though he isn't always, he's 11. I don't want to see TJ Reid just because he's an R being 22. Like, I just think.
Yeah. If he was 23, that would be okay. that would work. The Jordan number, the Beckham number.
That could be fitting, to be honest with you.
Just on that as well. I just throw it out to our viewers, and I take a couple more from you. What are the most iconic numbers that you associate with players? You mentioned a couple there. Owen Kelly 13 would definitely be another one. Brian Whelan 5. Brian was always 5. Kevin Martin was always 7. Johnny Dooley was generally always 10.
Tommy Walsh 5.
Yeah, like they're iconic ones, really.
Sullivan 3.
Yeah, remember towards the latter stage of his career, they started naming him 4, even though he was playing corner back. It was kind of a weird one.
Remember he played 4 against Waterford in the Munster final. Jeez, I think he was sick the same day. Was it Milan got a hat-trick? But I'd be saying I'm sick as well now, to be honest. But don't worry, he's done it to us all.
Yeah, no, that's a fact. Yeah, but get your comments in there. What numbers do you associate with certain players? You said Conor O'Mahony for 6. Offaly don't have a standout one that it would. Hubert Rigney generally would have been 6, I suppose. Pat Delaney would have been 6 as well. But get your comments in there. Just fly through another few quick comments here. Pa OK says. I'm not too sure. Not too sure exactly what he's talking about there. Adrian McGrath, who's fighting the good fight for Clare this morning, says Clare shredded Tip's defensive pace. We hit 323 from a position where Tip were hurling in the comfort zone, while Clare were hurling under pressure all day. Paddy, what do you make of that? Do you think your defence was shredded?
Is he saying yesterday? Oh yeah. At times. Oh my God, the last 10 minutes of the first half. I mean, and even to be honest with you, even while the goals were going in for Tip, Clare were still able to run him at times. I think there's a point that Tip have to look at there, and a lot of teams could do it to him, where when Tip don't play as a nice condensed 3 lines in the middle of the field, and it maybe takes another full forward to do this as well. When they don't play compact and small, I know it sounds soccery, right? But small gaps between midfield, half back, and half forward, then they can get really, really isolated. And I even think you saw it more so in the second half on some of the puckouts that Clare hit, that Shane O'Donnell was on Ronan Maher and he just ran him from one side to the other. And he was always out in front of him. But this was happening in the first half as well, where Tip weren't able to go with the pace of Clare. And Clare really, really pacey outfit. And we see for, was it Rogers' goal? It was like a 1-2, Tony Kelly. It was very like a goal that they scored last year against Tipperary. I forget who got it exactly, but Tony Kelly got it and flicked it on again. And Johnny Ryan, I think, switched off, or he got lost by Rogers for a split second, and they got that goal. But to me, as a Tip supporter, that was in danger of happening right throughout the day. Now, I think they did very well second half to hold that, and I think the black card helped because they were able to sit back at a very vital time and have another player back there. But Tip certainly were under pressure back there. And it never felt like Tip were able to truly get away from Clare. And, pace-wise, I've said it for a few years, Tip have a little bit of an issue. I think their conditioning is good. They were really able to go to the end the other day. They did well with the subs to bring them on when they did for extra energy. But certainly Clare, we always go back to the 3 goals. But certainly I didn't think Clare were any worse than Tip yesterday. And their decision-making went down because they went for a few goals, tried to run a few goals that if it was a close game, they would have taken scores. So I think Clare, still can look at it and say, without those goals going in, we could have had Tip's number, definitely.
Just a couple of quick ones on the iconic numbers. Milan 13. Yeah, me and you have both seen the back of that.
I've seen that number a lot.
I could tell you how many cogs were in his boots at different stages as well. Good one here as well. Declan Ryan 11. Another one for Milan 13 as well. Just one from Ken McGrath 11 as well. There's another one. He could be 6. He could be 8 as well.
He was 6 for me, I think, when he was playing. Loved him as centre back.
Because it was that iconic catch at the end of the Munster final when literally Cork had one play to level the game, and it was just like he caught the ball, game was over. And I remember just kind of shoving the chest out. I think they had a free then at the end. Just a quick one to you, Paddy, here. Would you be concerned by conceding 23 points? Obviously, 323. Listen, hurling, you probably concede a lot more maybe in games now. You score a lot more as well, but is that something that you'd be worried about going forward?
I thought it was a little worry because I thought there was a lot more chances there as well for Clare to have. I think the goal chances they were running at Tip. I thought Tip conceded goal chances near the end when you want to be tightening it up. Like, you know, I couldn't believe it a couple of stages in the last 3 minutes where it was kind of 3-on-3 at the back, and high balls, a couple of high balls coming in. Obviously, Michael Breen is only back play, has never really played inter-county full-back before. His man caught a couple of balls, knocked a few balls, so I think he's only learning on the job. So he has to learn to be a lot more negative, I think, and maybe make sure he's a stopper in the air. So yeah,
that takes a while, doesn't it? That takes a while when you're used to hurling. Like, it's like, to be honest with you, and you've played there, I've played there. Like, anywhere in the full back line is a specialised position, realistically. Like, it's different than anywhere else on the field.
It's a different sport, really, isn't it? Because
yeah,
you know, we have to be some sickos to be not wanting the ball, like, you know. But unfortunately, you play the percentages back there. You want to make it a dirty. If anything, obviously, you want to knock it away. But if, you know, worst case scenario, you make it a dirty ball where backs usually have the advantage. And I think sometimes, and I've actually seen that creep in a little bit. Even I watched Tip 20s the other night, where everybody wants the ball instead of, how about I shield the ball and it's in our backline. I'm just going to get my arse around to you to shove you out of the way, let my teammate come in. So I suppose it's not coached. It's not a coach thing. And, you know, back in our day, I suppose you were told going out playing the backs, I don't care if you don't touch the ball, but your man better have a quiet day as well. Whereas I don't know, is that ever said to a kid anymore? Maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe they want to go out and enjoy hurling. But certainly some of the defending near the end, I thought maybe it was concentration more than anything. But 323, it was probably a good bit to concede, I think. Yeah.
Boy, Jason, you're making the two of us sound old when you're saying back in our day.
I'm afraid it is getting to that stage. It is getting to that stage.
Hey,
don't worry.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. There's greys coming in, I can tell you. There's a good bit of light on me here that's protecting me this morning. Just on that, we're talking about like defenders and the dark arts. Like, Barrett was brilliant at times yesterday and was able to keep Tony Kelly relatively quiet when he was in around that area. He's a real throwback. He's an in-your-face defender. He does that job. He's brilliant on the ball, obviously, when he needs to be as well. But he does all that kind of dirty work that you need, you know, that type of player to do.
Yeah, look, Barrett tried and proven. Obviously, he has his drawbacks at times because he's, I don't know, what would you say, a passionate type of hurler. And, you know, again, hamstrung himself after 5 or 6 minutes yesterday by getting a yellow card on Tony Kelly. So to show the discipline for the rest of the game, to go with him, the pace, the power, Barrett missed a couple of months there.
He hasn't played since it beat Kilkenny. Like, that's a long time to come back in and go on one of the best hurlers in the country and keep him quiet.
Exactly. And just to have the engine, just have the pace, the discipline to go with him, and like, your mind can be getting very tired. To be fair to him, Barr setting up that chance for the Rodgers goal in the first half. There wasn't a huge amount coming from Tolly Kelly to that brilliant score in the second half, but that again was getting the ball in his own half back line nearly and running it. So as you said, in the forward areas, Barrett kept him under serious wraps. And look, Cathal Barrett is tried and trusted. He still looks as good as ever. The only things that ever hold him back sometimes would it be his discipline in the tackle, and then other times maybe his injuries. But to me, you know, if he's playing in a Limerick team, we could be calling him the best cornerback in Ireland a little bit more consistently because of the protection that they would get, you know. So for me, he's up there with all of those great players as well.
Just a quick question in here. Will 4 points get you a Munster? Really interesting, because, and he's probably asking that with the view to Limerick are obviously going to be favourites going in against Clare next Saturday. If Clare are to beat Waterford and Cork in their last 2 games, do you think 4 will get you out in 3rd place?
Yeah, probably will. It's hard to know, but as we were talking about, Munster is so competitive. Like, I can see, not that I think it'll happen, but I can see Clare going to Limerick and beating Limerick next week. Like, it's not beyond the realms of possibility, especially when Waterford are after putting a little bit of a blueprint there. Now, maybe that wasn't the best Limerick, but they have a little bit of a blueprint, and they've certainly given a bit of hope to some of the other teams after the league, where I was like, God, this championship is going to be run-of-the-mill stuff for Limerick, which is probably stupid on me. But there isn't a team who can't beat each other. Waterford's performance yesterday, because it was looking like they could be a little of the soft touch, they obviously are not. Played brilliant stuff yesterday after the first 15 minutes. So I'm not sure what will get you out of it. It could come down to score difference. That's why I was looking at Tipperary yesterday, saying, Jesus, drive on for a few more scores here if you can. Because certainly last year, Tip let a couple of teams off, and sort of give up maybe midway through the games. And, no matter what they got score-wise, they were probably going to not be able to progress with the score difference. So I'm not sure exactly. Limerick could end up winning all their games as well. Yes, even, they started off a little up and down yesterday. They could end up winning all their games, but I think teams are just it's helter-skelter. It's a minefield for any team trying to get through.
You've kind of teed up Limerick and Waterford nice and well there, so we might just go into that. It finished Limerick 118, Waterford 19 points. First, Waterford were brilliant, but this was a chance left behind, was it? Just to get something on the board here, just some of the wides that were hitting the second half, they clearly had Limerick well frazzled. Limerick played with 14 men. I think they got the next 3 points after Hegarty's sending off. Where do you start? There was so much to discuss here, but from a Waterford point of view, there is that sense of we missed a bit of an opportunity here because they were brilliant.
They were brilliant. And you know what killed them, I thought this would lead to a really hard day at the office, was they were so nervy looking at the start. And I think Limerick are gone to that stage, they're the boogeyman. They kind of do that to you. They haven't even tackled you and you're making stupid decisions. Or they haven't even tackled you and your touch is off. I think for the first 15 minutes, Waterford looked like they were afraid to do things. They looked like they looked up, second-guessed themselves, ball back in the hurley, run again, but run into trouble. The amount of times, I can picture that happening on several occasions for the first 15 minutes. And Limerick looked like they were just going to have an easy day at the office. But in fairness to Waterford, they rallied. Stephen Bennett got his couple of scores, got his few frees, and really took it to them. And in fairness, when the goal went in and Ty de Burke went off, they rallied. They rallied well, and I think they said to themselves, we're going to have to go for this. In terms of your touch, in terms of breaking tackles, in terms of hitting the ball in at times. And they got a few good balls into Desi Hutchinson around that period after the goal. And I think that showed them, give them a little bit of confidence. They didn't score off of them all the time, but it brought them back into the game. And, I suppose Limerick will look at themselves and say, God, we gave them a few easy frees, or certainly scoreable frees there when was there need, that tap down on the helmet of Stephen Bennett, he was running away to the sideline at that stage and possibly would have been swallowed up. A couple of more flicks, but the only thing I'd say about Limerick is they play on the edge so that when the free isn't given, they usually turn you over, they usually swallow you up. Yeah. So they will probably have to look at that a little bit. Though red cards, I'm sure we'll talk about that, the red card. But in terms of their discipline and nearly keeping Waterford in it, I think a couple of the fouls there that were needless. But after that, Waterford were brilliant. I thought I enjoyed their puck out strategy. To be honest with you, I know that would be getting a bit geeky now, but
no. So it was kind of the overload on Dermot Burns essentially. Yeah. Well,
I think if you try and move and get a perfect puck out against Limerick, I think they're very good to stop that, and they have their process in place. They have really long athletes, they have really fast athletes, like the Kilkenny of yesteryear. It has to be absolutely perfect, and your goalkeeper and your outfielder have to be perfect in what they're doing, their execution. So I think, and I admire David Fitzgerald said, I don't think we can actually do that. I don't think we're better than Limerick to do that. So what we'll do is we'll puck it down on Burns, right? I think he caught the first one, but we'll puck it down on Burns, but we'll make sure to have more runners coming onto that break. And it was about breaking the ball. Waterford, bar Ozzie Gleeson, aren't fantastic in the air, really. Maybe Mikey Kiley, but probably not as a proven wing forward. So we're going to puck it down on Burns. We're going to jostle into him. We're going to make it hard, make sure he doesn't catch it, which should be relatively easy. If you're only concentrating on knocking the ball to the ground, it should be easy to,
different story if you're trying to win it.
Yeah, it's the worst thing a forward can do at times is try and win it, because it sets the back man up to jump in your back, and that's what the back man, prefers. But they always had 2 or 3 coming onto the break. And the key to that is, and it's a kind of a defensive puck out too, the key to that then is that even if a Limerick guy wins it, there's still 2 or 3 Waterford lads who are coming for the break of the ball, and they're that barrier straight away. Whereas if you're trying to play these expensive puck outs and it doesn't come off, suddenly Kyle Hayes is running down your throat. And it's like a breakaway in rugby, where the whole thing is broken up and it goes from player to player to player to player. And inevitably you look like you can't win a ball in the half-forward line. You look like, oh, geez, they're too slow. Because when a team gets a run in you with the pace and power that Limerick have, it's impossible. It's impossible. Their hands are too good. They're too fast. So I enjoyed that one. And also defensively, I think it was Darragh Lyons. To me, they played. I didn't see exactly. I'd love to have been there, but it looked like they had 4 in their half back line. A literal 4, not a lad hanging, 4 in there. And the amount of times Darragh Lyons was the player that was with Tom Morrissey and seemed to be following him. And so if you 4 in that area, as you know, you have a lot less space to cover off. And so wherever the half forward line in Limerick run, there seemed to be a Waterford body with him. I was very impressed with that. Many times the Limerick play and Grode Hegarty or Tom Morrissey or Lynch are after making little runs and they've 3-4 yards on their opposition player. And certainly after the first 10-15 minutes the other day, and it was happening early, because you remember a ball that Hegarty had poked out in front of him but bounced awkwardly. He actually had that ball, only it bounced funny and it came away to his marker. I think it was Fagan. But after that, it didn't seem to happen. They were clutch tight, and it's really hard to do that. But I think they had help with an extra half back. But that was very interesting. And if I was a Clare, somebody in the management team, I'd be looking closely and right, how did they do that? And as you see, they withdrew one man out, so they gave the puck out short. But this time, usually if Limerick get a short puck out, they have the movement up front. But there was 4 and a half back line that didn't allow it, so that was very impressive.
I'm going to bring Naoise Waldron in here as well. Naoise, how are you getting on this morning?
Well, good. What's right?
We're just talking about Limerick and Waterford. Fascinating game. Tactically, I know Shane Dowling did a nice bit of analysis last night showing that Waterford nearly always had someone plugging one of the wings to basically deny Nicky Quaid, a third of the pitch. What did you make of it? It was a fascinating tactical battle.
That was the thing, yeah. It was kind of more not as free flowing as the Munster Championship probably has usually been the last couple of years, but like the way Paddy was saying there, the way Waterford set up with that 4 across the half back line. And the puck out thing was very interesting as well, because like I was at loads of their league games and they were trying something different in every game, and they've all these signals from Billy Nolan that one hand means this and then the option is go short or put it over the top kind of a thing. They couldn't really do any of that, so just driving it long was kind of their go-to. But it was really interesting, really interesting, because I didn't think they'd have as many lads back either. Like when I was talking to a few of them just at the end of the league, they were kind of thinking that Mikey Kiley wouldn't be back, and along with a few others there. Daly wouldn't be back, obviously he wasn't there, and Austin Gleeson wouldn't have taken part at all. And I was on with a couple of weeks ago with Shane and Hennessy, and we were saying I'd picked Limerick and Waterford to come out, definitely out of Munster. And I wasn't sure on the third, because just the way the league finished for Tip and Cork, I wasn't sure, and I didn't know what the hell Clare were like. But like after yesterday, I still think Waterford would be 1 of the 3 to come out, you would think. But really interesting. I think Waterford will probably be better in the next couple of games. They're very, now obviously losing Tyke de Bourke is a killer again.
He's just with one of the most unfortunate fellas. Like, he hasn't had a clean run. I remember him coming off in the first round in 18. He obviously did the cruciate in the All-Ireland final in 20. Like, he's had a really difficult last couple of years. Now, they adapted really well without him, I have to say, in fairness.
Yeah, because Jack Fagan and Caleb Lyons are really comfortable playing that role as well, because they were doing that a lot in the league. They were kind of swapping between who would be doing it and then who was the option for the puck out. More often than not, it was Jack Fagan. But yeah, it's just one of them things. Like, I suppose it's the way it is with the group championship kind of a thing. Like, you have to have a really strong panel. Like, and then the Leinster side of it, then look, Wexford are dead with it, like, nearly. But yeah, Tyke de Bourke, like, that's just annoying. It's just annoying even watching it, just seeing it, like, because you're kind of like, yes, this could be a good old year now for Waterford and for Tyke. And then you're just like, all right, there you go.
Yeah, and it was nearly the exact same time we went off in the All-Ireland final against Limerick in 2020 as well. Obviously, Limerick had a massive loss at the far end, and John Kiley was fairly non-committal on what Declan Hannon's injury was, or the nature of it was. That meant Mike Casey came in, Dan Morrissey went out to centre back. Kiley kind of lobbed a few volleys in the direction of the media, I would say, after anyway, and said it was bullshit to talk that they were going to win 6 in a row and that they were unbeatable and this kind of crack. In fairness, he teed it up after the league final. He said they were going into the most difficult Munster Championship that they'd ever been in. I don't know about you, but Paddy, I think this is the perfect scenario for Kiley. They're after getting a size 12 up the Swiss roll without losing a match.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's and for a team that's all about, they'll be all about standards. Any team who's trying to get there, less worry about wins and losses, because that's really fluctuating like emotions, but it's all standards with them. So he'll be able to hammer it into him, and he might drop a lad for next week, and he might bring in another lad, and he'll have them all peppering. Like that's the way it's going to be, and it's absolutely teed up perfectly for him. And like, it's not going to hit their belief, because they've won too many All-Irelands to have any shred of doubt about their belief. But it's just going to, you know, you even saw Tom Morrissey. I tell you, had a great game yesterday. He was after being dropped for maybe the league final, was it? League semi-final, league final. Colin O'Neill was in. So all of a sudden, Tom Morrissey was one of their most, you know, I thought he was one of the players that was bringing it all through the game yesterday. So now he's going to have 15 lads thinking like that, and maybe a panel of 30 that are thinking, well, I'll get a go now. It seems the boys didn't play well last week. So realistically, not too many would be dropped, but they're all going to be on high alert. You know, there was a number of lads taken off, a few lads taken off yesterday who wouldn't normally be taken off. And it's the perfect scenario for them. Especially, it came at the real right time as well. It's not it's not a stage where it's knockout. They still got the win. It wasn't a stage where they needed the points. They were still good enough to get through anyway. But now it's just giving that little jolt to the whole panel, and it's giving him a license to be like a Briar in training, which, you know, can only be good for Limerick going forward.
Naoise, I'm going to throw this one to you here. Adrian McGrath question in. Could you talk about the ref when De Borca was on the ground? No one was in possession. It was just a scramble and it ended with the decisive goal. Should the game have been stopped? Now, but this kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you remember Mossy Waters going down a few years ago. Like I think when someone looks in great distress in that sort of scenario and the ball's not in someone's hand, it's not like a 75% scoring chance. I think the play should be stopped. And I even was in O'Connor Park yesterday when there was a definite potential HIA, like it was clear a fella got a belt in the head and the player was just allowed to develop, and then they come back to it. Like, what do you make of this? I think referees are trying to be a bit too clever in this scenario, and I don't know if they think lads are messing on the ground or whatever, but it was obvious that he was in great distress.
But yeah, the Mossy Waters one was scandalous. Like, was actually worse than yesterday, like, as well, because remember the play kept going on around him as well, and it was like really close, and it was like, lads. But yesterday it was, even on the telly, like, it was obvious, and the people you could see a couple of the people around him, and the doctors immediately ran in because he was signalling and takes off the helmet. Is usually when someone goes down with a leg injury and take off their helmet, you usually know, and especially if it's tied to Burka or somebody like that, you like, my first thought was, his knee busted again, and then it was like, oh no, it mustn't be his knee. But yeah, like, it's like all the rules really. It's like, lads, like, I know it's hard and the game is moving faster than ever and all this kind of usual stuff that everyone says, but Jay's like, be consistent with the thing. Like, if the lad is down and he's genuinely hurt, stop the game. It doesn't matter if the other team is in possession and they're running in. If they see, like I would feel anyway, if they see that someone is actually, say it's a broken ankle, right, that you kind of go, okay, yeah, fair enough, like, right, that's fair enough. Let's throw in the ball or give us a free in possession or whatever it is. But like, it had to be stopped. I don't know why. Maybe, and you can't really say he couldn't see him. I mean, he's a big man playing centre back with a red helmet, and he's all of a sudden on the ground. You know? So you can't say he didn't see him because he's there around the play, like, and he's lying on the ground. You know, so I don't know. You'd have to ask the ref. You see, this is the thing.
There were probably a few controversial enough refereeing decisions. I know Gerard Hegarty got sent off. We'll come to that in a second. Paddy, what did you make of the Nash one? I think is a flick with the hurl with an attempt to get the ball, albeit a nice bit away from it. But to me, the Seamus Flanagan shoulder is a different type of thing completely. And that's very, very dangerous. And that wasn't dealt with at the time, which means they could go back to it retrospectively. What did you make? Like, to me, it was a red card. And do you think that's something that they'll maybe look at over the coming days?
I definitely think they'll look at it since it wasn't dealt with. I would say a red card probably, and he certainly put himself in a position to get a red card. It's the problem here is, I know it was slowed down, right, and that's a big problem because it's not real time. So the replays, we probably saw all the replays in a slow motion, so it looks like he had loads of time to change what he was doing. But to me, the ball was flicked, and it wasn't innocuous, like, you know, you just kept going, and that's the way it was. He did turn into him. He saw it was there, and there was no attempt at all to pull away or to alter your body position. You know, there's even a flinch you might do to just get your shoulder away from that position. You might hit him with your chest.
It stayed high, yeah. It stayed high, didn't it?
and you know, he saw what was happening. So I think Seamus Flanagan was very lucky not to get a red card yesterday. I think that there was no action taken. Even when I saw it, you know, on the screen first, I said, "Whoa, that's a free." I didn't know where he had hit him. I said, "Geez, that's a free. That's a full-on frontal shoulder. Even if the ball is gone, that's still a free. It doesn't matter." So that was me just watching live on TV. But when you connect with somebody's face guard, then you can expect a red. And the onus, you know, it can be innocuous if it's all the one movement. Like before, you know, when Nash collided with Fagan, I think he was in trying to make a hurling movement to flick the ball and just innocuously hit off Fagan's, you know, face guard. I think that can happen. But, you know, when you're going in for a ball and you're going into shoulder, the onus is on you as the defender or as the person tackling not to hit somebody in the head. And very much, I know there's always an issue with Richie Hogan's in the All-Ireland, but when you make the movement to actually go with your shoulder, you have to hit the shoulder, or even if you hit him a little bit in the chest or just off target on the shoulder, you might get a yellow. But if you hit him on the head and you've gone in for a tackle, then you can only expect a red, I think.
Paddy, I'm going to let you go on that one because I know you have kids to teach there, so I really appreciate your time. Thanks a million, Paddy. Talk to you again.
Lads. Thank you.
See you, Paddy.
Naoise, I'll just throw it back to you there. The Garrod Hegarty sending off. I think the first yellow was for back chat. I don't think he was happy with a decision that was made. It was definitely mounting of some kind anyway. Don't really think he can have any argument with the second one. To me, it almost looked into his chest. And you know, Conor Gleeson is going down and he's a bit smaller. What did you make of that incident? And then the Waterford mentor, Ollie Power, who had no business being where he was. And that's not something, like, he'd no business being there. Like, he wasn't in that vicinity and he put himself in that vicinity. Just talk me through your own thoughts on that.
Yeah, like the first yellow, obviously, he was mouthing. The second yellow, look, he had him lined up. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was going to absolutely drive him into the stand with a shoulder. You see that fairly often and all, but yeah, because he didn't get him nailed on shoulder, like, it has to be a yellow card, and then there's your second yellow card. Like, it's just simple as that, right? You're always kind of walking a bit of a tightrope when you get a yellow card for talking, because then it's like, right, if I give away one more bad foul here now, I'm going to get a yellow. So I was actually surprised that they didn't take him off before that. I kind of thought nearly at half time, because he got the yellow in the first half, didn't he? The first one, yeah. So I kind of nearly even thought at half time, she's like, I'd probably be looking. It was like when Ryan O'Dwyer used to get a yellow card for Dublin. Like, take him off now. But like that kind of thing.
Every time he goes to tackle somebody, you're thinking Ryan, and he just couldn't help himself.
yeah, like, and that was the thing. Like, you just kind of, but look, they still won with 14, but Ollie Power, not sure what he was doing there, really. Like, I remember, again, Dublin, I suppose, a couple of years ago, remember when Greg Kennedy jumped up and caught the quick free, and people were going mental, like, you know, whatever. But this was far worse. Like, you cannot touch a player. I don't care how hard he hit him, how soft he hit him. It was only a tackle percent. Doesn't matter. You cannot touch him unless you're holding him up from falling or something. But like, you can't thump him into the, like, so who knows what will happen, Ollie Power, but that was madness. I get the whole heat of the moment and like fire.
If you're there, Naoise, if you're standing right beside the incident, that's one thing. But to put yourself into the incident is another thing completely.
But that's what I mean, to step out and then to do the, like, whatever, like, you know, it's like, because it's a kind of a case of, what would you done if you'd have boxed him in the face, like, and next thing all hell broke loose, and it's like, you're a man, and I don't know what age Ollie Power is, but all of a sudden there you're against like the biggest athletes in hurling, and they all start attacking you. Suppose like this one winner, like, yeah, and then not only that, but then dragging all the rest of the old lads into it as well, like, you know, it's kind of like, but like it was mad, like, it was kind of funny when they were showing the replay and like now, but it's fairly serious as well, like, because it's like, what are you doing? And now you've lined yourself up. You're probably not going to be allowed to be on the sideline again for the rest of the year, I'd imagine. Like, because you can't do that. Like, you can't be doing that, as the lad would say. But like, you can't. It's just madness.
Just on that as well, Davy and Owen Kelly and Peter Queally would be like, in one way, like, they've momentum going into next weekend, but Nick Davy talked about, you know, a crestfallen dressing room and trying to get them back up for, like, but they delivered so much and still have nothing to show for it. And all they have to, and in a way, all they have to show for it is Tadhg de Búrca's injury and a lot of physical fatigue going into next weekend. Like, can they continue in that vein and produce something big against Cork and get a result against Cork next weekend?
I think they could, yeah. Now, the worst part of it is, right, I think, is losing Tadhg de Búrca. Whatever about winning or losing the game, it's far worse losing Tadhg de Búrca, because now all of a sudden you have to remodel an awful lot, and people will be starting that you were kind of relying on coming in
and just on that, it's a different story losing a guy mid-game. I always think, lads step up mid-game and play centre back. Like, you'd slip into a spot, but to start a big game centre back against, like, you're going to be marking one of the best players in the opposition's team from the start, and you're thinking about it. When you're not thinking about it, it's almost easier to do, if you get me.
Yeah, when you're thrown in and the game has already opened up, like, and yeah, it's totally different. It's totally different. That's why, like, there's so many lads, Jesse's great coming off the bench, but and then they don't get started, and you're kind of going, well, you bring them on with 25 minutes to go in every game, just play him. But some people are different. But yeah, it will be tough, but I think they're good enough to do it, like, and they're set up well enough. Like, the way I think they probably would be nearly better against Cork. I think, because Limerick are so physical and so good and so fast and so skillful, and they're set up, like, they smothered them in the first, like they smothered Waterford, let's say, in the first 10 minutes, like from sideline cuts, from puck outs, from long range frees. They had no options, and how many times did Waterford turn the ball over? It was crazy. And, like, funny thing as well is, like, if you're, I suppose, you'd be trying to nail on the positives all the time, where you're kind of going, only for a lot of bad shooting, lads, right? We really would have won that game. Like, I'd be kind of trying to get that back, reinforce that. And I think Desi Hutchison, for example, will have far more space against Cork than he did against Limerick. I tell you, Patrick Fitzgerald looked like he's been there years when he came on.
Brilliant. Paddy Fitzgerald, remember the block? Paddy Fitzgerald on Aaron Gallagher as well, the double save. Billy Nolan did brilliant as well at different stages yesterday too, for a lad that hasn't played many championship games.
This the thing, he stopped. I was just going to talk about, like, the pass. Hegarty's chance for a goal, Billy Nolan saved in the first half. That pass from Flanagan was unbelievable.
And Tom Byrne was that fixated with Hegarty that he wasn't looking at the ball across. He was just looking at Hegarty because he knew he could kind of sense what was going to happen.
And, like, it just went from the sideline under the stand right into Hegarty's hand, like, and it was like, that is an unbelievable pass. So everyone kind of, I know a lot of people kind of keep going back to, they're the best coach and they have the best system and all that. They also have the best hurlers. To pull that off, and Hegarty's just standing there. But anyway, Billy Nolan, it was a really good save. He stopped a penalty as well. So, there are a lot of positives from Waterford, I still think they're probably going on yesterday, probably the second best team. But obviously, playing Limerick first can be a bit of a drag physically. Because, my God, they just hit everything that moves. So it will be tough. But I think they will do it.
If you look at the physical toll that really throwing it down to Limerick takes on teams, for example, like Clare weren't able to produce anything of great note after really throwing it down to them in a Munster final. Even Kilkenny, after beating them in 19, didn't produce much in the All-Ireland final. There's a couple of more even I remember thinking before. The other thing I was going to say to you, what this reminds me of as well, I don't know if you follow the boxing, but they always said that Oscar De La Hoya had the blueprint to beat Floyd Mayweather, even though he didn't beat him, because I think it was like a split decision, points defeat or something like that, or Mayweather won on a split decision. But, like, do you think a lot of teams are going to look at Limerick now and look at what Waterford did and try and replicate it? And on the flip of that, Connacht is going to be Angus O'Brien, Alan Cunningham and John Kiley and Shawnee O'Donnell, the stats man, are going to be like, Jesus, we cannot allow this to happen again. We have to find workarounds and ways to make sure that we're not stifled by something like this, because a lot of teams will probably start doing that type of setup. They'll probably plant someone on one of the wings and make sure Nicky Quaid has less options on a puck out.
Yeah, and see, this was the reason why I kind of was talking about Waterford a good bit before the championship, was like the way they set up in the backs. Like, and again, it was immediate, right? When we played them with the underdogs, like, you were there, like, they have about 8 lads in the backs here, at least at times, like. And then against Dublin in the league, especially, like, I had a highlight package put together for it, and then in preparation for the tip game, but then they did the opposite for the tip game. So they were trying all these different things, but that's why I thought Waterford were probably the best set up. And then now, look, Tadhg is going to be gone now, but because they had Tig in the middle and then Calum Lyons and Jack Fagan running on either wing to carry it out, like with the power and stuff. So yeah, they have the blueprint, but do the other teams have the players? Like, this is the thing. Like, who else has the ferocious athleticism and skill of Jack Fagan and Calum Lyons carrying, and then Darrell Lyons being able to sit back as well and help out Tig, and then, you know, like, he picked up an enormous amount of balls. So, like, yes, it's probably the blueprint, but then you the other thing as well is, right, you know, you kind of say, geez, they hit an awful lot of bad wides from distance, but like, that was because it was probably the only option they had, and then you're tired and you're just going, I'm just shooting, and it goes wide. So like, Limerick kind of force you to make all these mistakes, like mentally, physically. They drain you to a point where, you know, someone runs up from wing back and shoots from 80 yards. And you're going, as we've talked about this for the last month, don't do that. But then they just force you to do it. And then one of the Morrisseys was talking as well during the league too, after on GA Bio, and he was saying about Connacht, like, back to your point, where he sets up basically all these scenarios on how to beat Limerick, and then they play them in training.
That's right.
So it's like, So it's like, yes, we play this way, and this is what we're really good at. But here's how you lose. Here's how you beat that. And then so they like you know, they're unbelievably intelligent. They're really well coached. You know, so they'll be ready again. And like, again, like kind of Paddy was saying too about John Kiley, like, talk about a shoe to beat them with or whatever. Like they're welcoming Clare next week. Like, and Clare will be coming all guns blazing. Like.
Yeah, couple of good comments in here. Catnap just says, people were saying the same about Waterford after the game v Limerick last year. We know what happened after that. One of the previous viewers also made a comment to say that, you know, Waterford had so many things in their favour but still didn't get over the line. And I think Catnap kind of follows up on that and says, lads, Limerick were down to 14 and Waterford still couldn't beat them. You can't ignore that it was a massive advantage to Waterford that they failed to take. Amazing how Limerick were able to take the sending off, just breathe almost, and get the next kind of 3 scores. It was a really fascinating game. Munster Championship definitely delivered yesterday. Anyway, just to chat to you about the Leinster Championship briefly, Naoise. Well, not too briefly anyway, but the probably biggest game of the weekend. Well, there was 2 games. The one in Corrigan Park is definitely worth dissecting fairly well too. But in Pearse Stadium on Saturday evening, it finished, I think Galway had 6 points to spare over Wexford. Wexford started like a house on fire despite being without Lee Chin and Damien Reck. Like, I was kind of thinking after the match, like, how much is Lee Chin worth? How many points is Lee Chin worth to Wexford?
Yeah, I was saying pretty much the exact same thing when I was just walking around here yesterday evening thinking about it, like, as well, or Saturday even, whatever it was. And it's kind of saying, you know, right, okay, yeah, I know Chin was missing and Reck was missing, but like, the way they lost, like, so say Galway, obviously you'd be kind of going, yeah, you know, 2 goals in the first couple of minutes, or it was 2-1, you know, it's 2-1 or 2-2 scored in the first 6 minutes, but then only scored 8 or 9 points between then and the end of the match. The way Galway won the game, they were far better. They didn't score a goal, and they still came back from that. You know, it was just point, and just took over the game. So, yeah, like, look, Lee Chin is class. Like,
put a number on him. How many? I was trying to actually think, like, how many points is he actually worth to them?
It's hard to know, because, like, your attention to get drawn to him, then you can pop it out to somebody who's then free, let's say. So
yeah, but even his overall contribution, shall we say, like, he's worth 4 to 5 points to them. Like,
yeah,
I'm just saying, like, Rory O'Connor hit the freeze, so whatever freeze Chin would have hit, would say that's the same. But just getting a couple of scores, creating havoc, handing ball out, like, then I'm kind of thinking, we're Galway that impressive in one way then as well, if you get me, given that, like, they should be beating Wexford without Damien Reck and Lee Chin.
That's the thing, like, they should be beating Wexford without them lads. And then the way they were set up, it's hard to know what Lee Chin could have done in there, like, because they had a really, really good, tight, kind of heavy loaded setup, where it was like, even though, look, I know they scored 2 goals in the first few minutes, but after that, I don't, you know, they had maybe a half chance here or there. But, like, you know, Conor McDonald in the edge of the square was, at long last, thank God he's in there, from a Wexford point of view. But yeah, like, you're probably talking 4 to 5 points, and then from the guy. See, the other thing as well was, like, the weather on Saturday looked absolutely like, so, like, brutal. So, you know, it was a total, like, the hurling on Saturday was completely different than the hurling on Sunday. just because it was so wet and horrible. It was more like the games in February and March, like, you know, so hard to know. And let's say from a Galway point of view then, right, not relying on Conor Whelan, I suppose, is a huge plus. Not relying on Cooney is a huge plus, you know, that it was Evan Nyland popping up with an awful lot. And then, like, Pádraig Mannion, McInerney, you know, it was different kind of fellas that won the game, I thought, for them anyway on Saturday.
Yeah, just on Nyland, probably a bit of a breakout game for him. I think he ended up with seven from play. Now, I don't envisage him getting half the space that he got the other. Like, to me, if you're going, like, man marking one of the Galway fought, well, you could say man marking a few of them, but you're going to keep a lad tight to him, and you're not going to let him have a free stroke ad. If he gets a free, like, I don't know if he missed the other day from any of the shots that he had. If he gets a free stroke ad, he will generally score. For him now, it's about kind of backing it up, because there's been previous performances where, you know, maybe he hits like 17 points or something like that, and then it's a patchy game the next day, and then maybe he's not starting the day after that. So I suppose the challenge for him is, and about backing it up, he's back it up against Kilkenny kind of next weekend. So it's like he'll get him and Galway get a fair test again next weekend too.
Oh, big time. That should be a savage game in Nolan Park. Galway Kilkenny is always good anyway, but Nolan Park now would be class.
The last time they played was one of the best that was one of the best games of the round robin. TJ gave one of the best performances in defeat that I've ever seen. I think Galway finished with 13 men, did they the same day, still won, and still ended up not getting out of Leinster somehow. That was
a fairly dramatic year. Yeah. That was brilliant. And Conor Whelan, I remember that day as well, was unreal. And like, this is the thing, like, right, so say you man mark Nyland now, right? Like, Concannon is too dangerous not to just ignore, and Conor Whelan then as well is too dangerous to ignore. And then, like, Cooney then all of a sudden pops up, and you're kind of going, geez, like, there's all of a sudden now Galway have 4 or 5 lads that you have to tie down. Like, whereas it used to be, right, let's stop Joe Canning, and yeah, maybe the other lads will get 2 or 3 points, but who cares?
Yeah,
like, kind of thing. Whereas now it's like, oh no, actually, we have to stop him. We have to stop him, and we definitely have to stop this lad. You know, because you can't, like you're saying there, you can't let Nyland be free. You definitely can't let Concannon be free, because he's one of them lads that if he gets kind of 3 points in the first half, he could end up with 7 from play, and you're kind of going. And Conor Whelan the same, like, so that'll be a right game now next week. But I think Shefflin, you see, the thing is, like, if you're leaving that game there, right, win the first game. That's the most important thing. And as well as that, they hit as well as Waterford. This was like a team over the weekend. I know the weather was worse on Saturday, I suppose, but then you think you really need to be smart with the ball. They hit some awful long range wides, like awful. These ones where you're kind of going, what are you even trying there? Why are you shooting? You know, kind of running towards the sideline and leaning back and just
mad literally stuff,
driving it. So they have a lot to improve on, but it's a good win to come out with.
It looks like Shefflin has gone really hard after the 6th, having a really solid defence. Like, the half back line is like, you're thinking Henry played them on the greatest teams of all time. They had one of these, you know, grey half back lines that you just couldn't penetrate. They were an absolute launch pad. You couldn't break them down. And in Mannion, Dahi Burke at centre back, and Joseph Cooney, and then maybe with Fintan Burke to come in, they've plenty of options there. Like, personally, if Fintan Burke is fit, I'd probably play him wing back, and I'd probably push Joseph Cooney up, because I think it gives the team a bit of a better balance. Thought Grealish was very good in the corner. We've seen him, he's tigerish. We've seen that before. I thought McInerney, after the slip for the first goal, actually settled into the game really, really well. Just good comment in here from Richard Hogan, just on Wexford, and this is maybe something similar to the Waterford comments. Just on Wexford, they got the perfect start and lost the remainder 24 points to 12. Despite missing Chin and Rec, they need to be better. I would assume Chin starts against Antrim. Kind of, I was watching on the GA go, and it was like, you see a kind of a fairly serious conversation between him and Dara Egan. And it's kind of like, you know, I think he did something with his AC joint last Monday, which is a very sore dart now. Very, very sore dart. I was wearing rugby shoulder pads for a year after doing the AC joint. But he was obviously in the mix, but then you're kind of thinking, this game is probably gone away from us. We've Antrim coming to town the next day. We know they've got a point on the board as well. I think they've probably boxed Clever there if he's going to have a 20% chance of being more fit for this weekend.
Yeah, because the thing with the AC joint, you play against a team like Galway. So, like, imagine throwing him in there on Burke or McInerney. Even a shove and he falls, you'd be gone for a month. like it, because I did it as well on my right shoulder, and I couldn't sleep on it for about 3 or 4 months. Like, it was absolute torture. But yeah, the thing is, so like the day when we were talking to Barry Hennessy, we was like, pick 3 teams from Munster, 3 teams from Leinster. I had said, obviously, look, Galway, Kilkenny, and then I said Dublin, just purely because Wexford have so many injuries. But then, there's actually a bit of a chance, like, that Antrim could come out of this, like, right? And because if Wexford play like they did there the other day, don't have Chin, don't have Rec, like, Antrim have as good a chance of getting some kind of result there as any team. So like, Wexford they're under pressure, and I know, like, they do have key lads injured, but in the group stages, the way it works out, every team is probably going to have to deal with that at some stage. So now this is things like they have to deal with it, because they kind of have to win this game against Antrim, like, and then hopefully fixtures work out for them, and it'll come down to, right, will we beat Dublin or not, like. So yeah, I think, once you kind of realise the way the game is going, there was no point in putting in Lee Chin there. Like, I know you want to win every game and all that, but you have to be smart. Like, there's always for this now, there's a game next week that now we have to win. And even like the AC joint, you talk about getting a tap on it, like even trying to lift up their hand to control the ball and stuff, and even trying to lift it up to jump. Like, it's anyone that's done it will know, like, it's torture. But they weren't good enough. They started like a house on fire, but then after that, they weren't great. They were outfought, outperformed, out everything, like, really.
Yeah, Conor McDonald's penalty was a bit of a lifeline. I was surprised he hit it, being honest with you. Rory O'Connor was hitting the freeze. I no disrespect to Conor. I think he's a brilliant player and he's a brilliant paw. I've never really liked him standing over a place ball, being honest with you. I just don't think it looks that fluid. I probably would have had Rory O'Connor hitting it. Obviously, there was the elephant in the room was Mark Fanning would have been hitting it, but I believe he's not on the Wexford panel anymore from recent weeks, and James Lawler made his debut the other weekend. So that's it's probably not something they'd really prepared for in one respect as well,
Yeah, and there was a few poorly hit penalties this weekend actually as well, like, so.
I would have banked on Galan scoring. I would have banked on
Galan
scoring yesterday. Yeah.
But it's gas the way people are kind of doing the penalties now, like, where it's nearly like the kind of soccer walk up. Like, they're being like trying to be like real composed and go up slow, and then like, look, when the goalie moves, I'll put it there. And it's like, right, go up and drive it into the back of the net, right? Yeah, go low, brilliant, put it to a corner, but go up with a bit of intent, march up to it. Like the way, the way DJ and all them used to take, like, get up to it quick, rise it, and drive it with your momentum. Like, the kind of going up, and that's great on a real hot sunny day, like, and when the ball is perfect, the grass is perfect, and all that, but just get up and smash it into the goal. And then when it's wet like that, bounce it low, and because I don't even know, like, Wexford goalie didn't even move, like, he kind of was standing, so he's right-handed, so that it went to his left shoulder.
Perfect,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, he could have nearly caught it. Like,
Galway
goalie. So it was just, it wasn't a great penalty, and that was at a really kind of key time where if they had scored that goal, you would have actually kind of probably put serious consideration into putting on Chin then, because you're kind of going, right, this could be a change of momentum here. If he came on and won a free and got a couple of points, this could turn the game for us. But then when they missed, you're kind of going, and you could nearly kind of feel it and hear it, and then going, the usna, as they say. What's that? Aside. So that was they needed that goal. Which
I have Terry Hyland waiting in the wings, Nish. So I'm going to finish on this one with you. Antrim were so close to getting that big upset that the round robin has been looking for. Offaly couldn't do it in 19. Carlow couldn't do it in 19. Nish weren't able to do it last year. Westmeath nearly did it last year. A bit of a missed opportunity, but at least they got something out of it. And as you say, like, that sets up for a brilliant game this weekend. And they're not going to play Galway or a Kilkenny this weekend. They're going to play a bit of a wounded Wexford in more ways than one as well. I know it's logistically a nightmare to even travel down the whole East Coast or whatever. But geez, if they could get a result out of it, it would open up Leinster completely.
Well, the travelling down isn't too bad when you're kind of looking forward to thinking we have a chance here.
Yeah,
it's the way back up, I suppose. It depends on the result, but like, so the Antrim one is probably similar to Waterford, except Antrim got a result out of it where they really probably feel geez lads, we should have won that game only if we tightened up this and that and the other. But Dublin, you know, by all accounts, now I didn't get to see the whole thing, like, but by all accounts, you know, Donald Burke missed an awful lot of chances. He missed a really good goal chance in the first half. So Dublin then on the flip are probably thinking, lads, we should have won that game, like that. We missed too many chances, etc., etc. But the way it worked out, you know, judging by what the lads were saying, and all, I only got to see the highlight package that looked like it was recorded on an old Sagem or something. Like they, you know, they were saying that the draw was probably the fair result. Cian O'Sullivan, you know, got 6 points or something. Ronan Hayes looked like he made a massive difference when he came in for Dublin, but like it tees it up lovely. It really, really does. Like where, like you're saying there, like Wexford are kind of not at full strength. They're coming off a bit of a heavy kind of defeat. Like the scoreline is probably bigger. Like it probably feels worse than the scoreline would tell you. I would have thought. So I think Antrim have a really good chance of getting something there. Depending now again, look, depending on the fitness of Rec and Lee Chain, etc., etc. So, yeah, they'll be going in now for the first time in a while, going into a game where they kind of think, as we have a great chance of qualifying here. If you get a draw or a 2 points out of this game, and even if they lose, they're still in it. Like, depending on what way the other fixtures go, obviously. So this is kind of one like really go grab the bull by the horns and just go at it, like, because they definitely have the hurlers. They've always had the hurlers. This is the thing. But now it's just about making sure you make no defensive mistakes and give away 2 or 3 soft goals. You know, this thing, and I've even seen in the highlights again, 2 lads in the backs jumping for one ball, and it breaks down to a lad behind you. Oh, geez, lads, like this is under 12 stuff. Like, and it this kind of stuff, right? And it kills the team. And next thing, all of a sudden, like we've seen a few times with Antrim, is you let in 1 goal and within 5 minutes there's 2 more gone in and then the game's over and you're kind of going, so don't let that happen. Be disciplined and hurl away and attack the game, like, and because Jesus would blow up the Leinster Championship. Be brilliant.
Be class. Yeah, I know it would be class because it's what we're all. We just want that unpredictability, don't we? Like, you know, that's what we want. The other round robin game in Leinster, Kilkenny had a comprehensive victory over Westmeath. Bit of a non-event here. Westmeath were without Killian Doyle. Won't spend much time talking about it. Just the return of TJ Reid. The news that Billy Drennan confirmed he's going to be out for probably most of Leinster. Paddy Deegan had to get surgery on a meniscus tear in his knee as well, so he's going to be out over for at least probably I'd say a month as well. But 4 cracking games set up next weekend. It's teed up absolutely beautiful. Naoise, thanks a million for coming on, and we will chat hurling with you again very soon, no doubt.
No bother. Thanks Verney.
Thanks, Naoise. Good man. Talk to you soon. Delighted to have Terry Hyland. Terry, sorry for leaving you in the background there for a while. There was a small bit of hurling, a bit more hurling that we had to discuss. Do you watch it at all, actually? Do you watch the hurling as much as the football, or would you pay much attention to it?
Well, not as much now, to be fair, because, you know, hurling is not very strong up this neck of the woods. But yeah, look, I would watch it okay, and, you know, it's a great sport, but I suppose it's in the minority up this end of the world.
Terry, obviously a busy weekend of football as well. I won't point you in any particular direction. What would have been your highlight of the weekend? Obviously, my own personal highlight is my own lads doing the business yesterday in O'Connor Park. But what was the main kind of takeaway from the footballing weekend?
Yeah, well, that probably was the biggest shock yesterday. Would have been that Meath game. I'd have to say, you know, I mean, Meath would have been expected. I know things may not have been going that well in the camp, but they would have been expected to account for Offaly, to be fair, you know, and I know Offaly has a little bit of motive this year for them after poor Liam Kerr's passing away, but, you know what I mean, maybe that is carrying them on a little bit. I didn't see the game, so, you know what I mean, they seemed to be worthy winners on the scoreline. They were 7 or 8 points ahead at one stage, and I know that the report said they were kind of hanging on a little bit at the end, but at the same time, I just followed the scorelines and I looked as if Meath weren't really in the game.
No, they weren't. They kicked a hell of a lot of wides as well. The first score came in the 23rd minute. It was a hand-passed effort. Like, that's kind of how bad it was at that stage, that they needed to get that close nearly to get the ball over. They 2 points scored at half-time, and they chipped away and brought on a few subs and made it very interesting down the stretch, but never really looked like winning it. Your own native county were out at the weekend. Cavan obviously fell to Armagh, finished 114 to 12 points. How would you kind of summarise this game? Cavan's misfiring in front of the goals definitely didn't help anyway.
Well, probably was it shot selection or bad execution, probably a little bit of both. I think that some of the shots that took weren't on at the time, and I suppose maybe you have to credit Armagh from that point of view. I think it was the pace of the game, Cavan. I think what has shown us, if anything else, is how important the league has got now running in the championship, because it comes so fast. And the fact that Cavan have been playing in Division 3 and Armagh have been playing in Division 1, and it's the fact that it's just more competitive, and Cavan didn't really start the game. They seem to be getting up to the pace of the game the last 15, 20 minutes, but at that stage the game has gone away from them.
Yeah, this is a big opportunity for Armagh. Like they need to go and do something at provincial level. They haven't won a hell of a lot of games under McGeeney's reign at provincial level. They've had some great runs through the qualifiers, and after being relegated from Division 1 to Division 2, looks like they've kind of stabilised a small bit, and it looks like they're going to have a good chance, obviously, of a provincial title in time.
Yeah, well, look at, I suppose, they have Down up next. Again, Down have been playing in Division 3. Donegal, yes, they were very disappointed. Obviously, they have their own turmoil up there, and it come home to roost them yesterday. I did expect Donegal to beat them, to be honest with you, because of the fact that they had been competing up for so long in Division 1 and that. But Down, to be fair, are getting their act together in that they have a pattern to their play, and they have a method and the way they want to play. And you could see it for flashes against Cavan in the league, where they all want to run ahead, and they create a lot of goal chances on the back of that, so they do. But I would expect that Armagh probably would have too much for them. Going to be very interesting on the other side now with Derry and Monaghan. I suppose it's a kind of a 50-50 game. People would be fancying Derry because they come through last year. But the one thing about that Monaghan side, there's a little bit of fire on the belly, and there's, they know how to dig out results, as it's shown in the league as well. So I wouldn't put it down as a foregone conclusion that Armagh have their hands half on the Anglo-South Cup by any means, to be honest with you.
You just mentioned there, obviously, about Down and Donegal, and it's amazing when things are going wrong, how it's just so hard to stem that tide almost. They finished Down 2-13, Donegal 1-11. Like, if you'd said this time last year that was going to be the case, like, Down were the ones in turmoil. Now their dander is up. Donegal were going okay last year. Now they're in absolute turmoil as well. I don't know, is there any way for Donegal to rescue their season at this stage? It doesn't look that likely.
No, it's going to be very, very hard for them. I think that, Paddy Carr leaving obviously in the middle of the season wasn't a help to anybody. I think it's, I don't think it's a wise move on anybody's behalf. I know Paddy probably left because he had his meeting with his players and felt it was for the benefit of the team. But yesterday showed that actually they didn't get any kick out of that at all. And when you get that little bit of a division or divisive attitude within in a group of players, it's something very, very hard to put together, certainly in the short term. I think Donegal's year is over, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it definitely looks like it. It looks like it's over before it started. But just fly through. You probably haven't seen too much of the games in Leinster, obviously, but obviously the standout result, Dublin 4-30, Laois 2-9. You probably haven't seen too much of this, but you've probably seen a good bit of Dublin throughout the league. Definitely looks like they're back to close to where they want to be anyway, and they're going to take a fair bit of beating towards the latter stages of the All-Ireland this year, you'd imagine. Yeah,
well, look at it's okay. Obviously, Dublin are strong and going to be strong, and you still always get them in the top half dozen. I don't know if it's a reflection of the scoreline yesterday. It's again going back to what I said about the divisions. You had Laois competing in Division 4, and Dublin getting back up to Division 1, and I suppose it's a numbers job in one sense. When Dublin cut loose on you like that, they can do that to anybody. But perhaps it's a sign of where Leinster is more than anything else, to be fair. It's I would be just more judging on that. As regards Dublin on the All-Ireland series, I think it's very open. But I wouldn't certainly put them at number 1 or number 2 at this point in time yet, anyway.
Just on the provinces, it's amazing. Like, we've got generally really competitive games in Connacht. We've got really competitive games in Ulster, and Kerry put up 25 points in Tipperary the other night, kind of doing a half speed. Dublin put up 4-30 on Laois. It's totally skewed in two provinces, yet it's really competitive in two other. Like, what's your view on the provinces? They've already given us some amazing moments already this year. The Monaghan one, obviously New York beating Leitrim as well, which we might come to you in a second, which I'm sure was disappointing from your respect as a former Leitrim manager. But what do you make of the standings of the provincial championships at the moment? Are we coming close to the time where we need to maybe go into open draw territory, or what do you think?
Well, I think it's heading that way anyway. I think you can see the change. You can see that, I can see it personally, and nobody has said this to me, but I personally see I see a complete sea change the way the competitions have been ran. I can see where the league is becoming more important, which in my opinion, as it should be, because that's what everybody's playing at their own level. The last 16 is playing towards a kind of your backdoor job, as you were alluding to there, and I think that's the way it's going to come. And the only danger I see in all of this is, and I'm probably old enough, and probably won't be around long enough to see it, but I can see the whole thing changing maybe to a semi-professional game, and maybe 20 type teams, call them what you like, clubs or counties or whatever, we go down that route. You see TV coming in on the back of it. It's a very, very popular sport, football in Ireland. It has a great audience, and I think that's going to end up, it's going to be exploited in the years to come.
Is that a good or a bad thing in your opinion? Like, are you talking about 20 teams as in potentially, weaker counties merging for the sake of competitiveness? Or
I would think that. I think it's going to go a little bit like the rugby. I know the rugby has gone only to 4 provinces, but I think we could be the fact that it's an indigenous sport to Ireland. It's not going to go down that route, but I do see it going where the weaker counties, I think, will get gobbled up a little bit, so they will either have to amalgamate or get absorbed in by some of the other stronger ones, and that is the danger, and having danger in it as regards the actual shape of the game or the competition as it is now.
How do we prevent against something like that? The Tailteann Cup coming in, obviously, and I think it was treated very, very professionally in the first year, with very good winners who celebrated it like winning an All-Ireland, which it was. How do we prevent against something like that happening? Because I wouldn't like the sounds of it anyway, to be honest with you, and I think it's hard bait, the parochialism of your own counties, even if just Offaly winning yesterday, even if we are back in the Tailteann Cup, which we more than likely will be, and we go on a run there, I would take that over. We're not going to win All Ireland realistically, but I'd still take getting to a Tailteann Cup final or winning that. That would still mean a lot to me. Whereas, if we ended up with someone else, I don't know. But as you say, if there's money and finances and commercial deals and all this kind of thing involved, what I wouldn't like it myself. Are you foreseeing the future? Is it something you'd like to see, or is it just something you think will happen in time?
I think it will happen. It's not necessarily whether you like to see it or not like to see it. I think our demographics, our population is shifting. You yourself, you're an Offaly man, you're an Offaly jersey. I am assuming you're probably living in Dublin.
I'm living in Dunboyne and Meath, actually.
There you are. So you're living in Meath. So you've moved towards the East Coast, and this is what's happening. And the politics of Ireland has totally changed. You alluded to the parochial end of it. If you look to the west, you look at West Cavan, for example, from it's totally denuded of population, and clubs are where they have facilities, they haven't got people, and it's all changing. And I would see it as a government policy. They want people living now in urban areas rather than rural areas. So the whole lot, it's all changing. So this will come as part of that change, I'm afraid.
Okay, we'll watch that with close interest. Just a question coming in here, Terry. Are Louth probably the second best team in Leinster? That was a big win for them yesterday. They were down 1-9-4 at halftime against Westmeath and getting the result after. Just a brief word on, you might touch on that question, and a brief word on what Mickey has done there, taking them from Division 4 to 3 to 2, nearly to 1, and their favourites going in against Offaly realistically this weekend as well, and have a chance of getting to a Leinster final. Their first since the famous Joe Sheridan final.
Yeah, as well, I suppose, in fairness, look, it's amazing what a little bit of organisation can do, and when you bring in somebody with that kind of know-how that has done it in a county before. I would know Peter Fitzpatrick quite well, Peter, chairman of Louth, and in fairness, they have put a lot of effort into this, and they're looking at their stadia now and different stuff like that. And again, a county with a population base that they have, they should never have been competing down in Division 4. And you know what I mean? It augurs well for them from the future, and it's good for the growth of the game in Louth, because soccer would be pretty strong up there as well. So,
yeah.
But they have big population bases, your Drogheda and Dundalk, that type of stuff. So there's no reason why they shouldn't be up there competing all the time.
Terry, the last time we were chatting to you, I felt there was an itch to get back into management. I wonder, did it happen?
Well, I've taken on a local club, Kilgarry, here this year, so trying to get used to that again. It's been a long time. I haven't done a club since 2009, so it's a little bit of a change to go back to club football. But I'm enjoying it, and I always enjoy actually being involved in football anyway. Enjoy being involved with people. It's just one of those things that's kind of in your blood or in your nature, whatever way you want to put it. But no, it's so far so good. We are playing away in the league here. We have this famous split season, which I have a little bit of a puzzle with, in that, to me, in most counties, the clubs seem to play away anyway, whether there's a split or no split. So,
what level are they competing at, Terry?
they were county finalists last year, so they're competing.
Sorry, Killygarry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're county finalists last year. They're a young club, young team. Look at again like that. They have enormous potential going forward. They have a very, very big player base going down the line. So you know what I mean. They have a club base that should put them in the frame in the next 10 years going forward. You know?
What's your puzzle with the split season, and how difficult is it to manage that as a club manager?
Yeah, well, perhaps, you know, it seems to be a case of, in that clubs want to get started, they're ready to get up and running. Then you get a club that maybe has 4 or 5 fellas involved with county squads, and they're starting off without that. And I suppose it's down to how you structure the league, in that you give everybody a fair crack of the whip, that, you know, you have most of your players available for at least 50% of your games or something like that. It only matters the structure. It's not that I have any issue with it. Some counties start earlier, some counties start later, some counties play a league format and championship, some play knockout. But from what I can see, is club football seems to finish earlier now than ever it finished. So maybe that's what young people want. I don't know.
So when would you have went back, for example? Because it is a bit of a balancing act in, like, you could say you go back the first week in January, you mightn't be playing a championship game until, if Cavan go well, you might be playing a championship game until the first weekend in August.
Yeah, and most counties would, but that's when they're coming in. But depending on how the championship is, you know, if you play a round robin or a league basis, possibly 50% of your clubs are finished at the end of August, early September, and then they do nothing. Now, maybe we were just used to, in my time playing football, you just played football all year long. Perhaps we didn't put in as much preparation into playing football as people do now. There seems to be a niche to get started January, February with everybody.
There's a fear. There's this innate fear in the GA that your rivals are leaving you behind. It's this, and texts start flying around that X, Y, or Z are back. They've 6 weeks done. They're flying, and it's gas. All this preseason stuff goes out the window once you forget about legals. If everything is forgotten once your first championship match is played, and whether you win or lose, and it's irrelevant what training you were doing. I just think it's mad. Is this innate fear in the GA? Oh no, Johnny's team up the road are doing this. We have to get back.
Yes, and if you don't seem to have all these gym sessions done and all this running sessions done, and, you know, as I try and keep telling them, fellas, we play football with a ball. You know, it's a round thing, and that's what we play with. So I never see anybody saying, have you got 10 footballs here? I want to go out and practice kicking frees. We have this preference for the gym and preference for all this other stuff that we can tick a box and say that you've done. But rather than saying, I'm going out now, I'm going to do a scoring drill and see how many times I score, you know, as you know, I have kind of changed maybe the terminology. People you tell you we're going to go out to do a shooting drill. And I said, well, everybody can shoot, but how many people can score? You know, you can hand a gun to somebody and
so it's a scoring drill. It's a scoring drill, not a shooting drill. The last one I just put to you, Terry, I should have said it earlier, just about Galway and Roscommon. I finished Galway 1-13, Roscommon 1-9. I heard kind of Davy Burke talking after, just saying that maybe the whole emotional element of beating Mayo, they just weren't able to. There was a bit of an energy kind of a deficit. Maybe once they got going, they made the game really, really competitive. Now, by all accounts, this was more akin to an Ulster kind of football game in how tight it was. There were very few plays in the game, shall we say, a lot of holding on to the ball, a lot of kind of methodical kind of play. But Galway are after negotiating their way through to a Connacht final. They're going to be heavy favourites going in against the Sligo side that beat New York. Just like in an open season, are Galway far away from winning All-Ireland?
Well, again, as a state of bank, I mean, to be honest with you, can you give me a definitive favourite for the All-Ireland? I can't pick one. No. It could be Kerry, it could be Galway, it could be Dublin, it could be Yeah, really, it could be Armagh. It could be, you know what I mean? I don't see anybody's form, and that's probably because the way the championship was moved back towards the start of the league, the teams are coming in at a different prep level maybe than other years. The Galway certainly would be in the shake-up and the mix. Yesterday was, I suppose it was a very tactical game. It would have been the case of matchups, and Galway probably kind of kept Enda Smith quiet for a while, but yet Enda laid on the goal, and he probably laid on another goal chance, but he punched one across that they didn't take. I think it was a case of that maybe just Galway had one or two more better players than Roscommon had yesterday. They kind of showed in the end.
Do you enjoy modern football?
I do. And I just smile when I talk to guys maybe my generation, older generation, and football is not as good as ever was. See, you have to evolve with everything that's happened. And the problem is, our generation was kick it and run after it, as I call it. You know what I mean? And if you were happen to win it, and the other fella won it, and you took it off, and whatever it was, on forward, how to win his own ball. With, technology coming in and people looking at other sports, and they take a little bit of basketball, and they take a little bit of rugby, and they take a little bit of everything. And if you remember, like years ago, you had Kerry guys going over to show South Africans how to catch a ball. You know what I mean? Everybody mimics what's going on around the world and take a little bit of everything. And as it should be, because as humans, that's what we do. We learn. We see something, we adapt to it, or we copy it, or we take a piece out of it. And that's just the way football has gone. And I don't think that... I think people appreciate more mistakes being made sometimes than they do the actually good part of it,
I'd be the same. I'd be a big snooker fan, and I love big breaks and stuff like that. It's great, but to me, the best frame of snooker is when mistakes are being made. It's the same sometimes with football and hurling, when things are going that frenetic that you're not 100% sure what's going to happen. Whereas now, generally in football, you think they're all fairly assured in the ball. They're generally going to do a safe enough thing with the ball as well. So that bit of kind of jeopardy is kind of gone as well, in a sense, if you get me.
Yeah, but that's because, to be fair to teams and team management, you can't afford to make too many mistakes. If you do, you're going to lose the game. So it's a case of, what are we here for? Are we here to provide entertainment? Yes, to a point, but we're also here to win. So it's how you get that balance right. Now, lovely, if you can provide entertainment and win as well, and get a brand that will do that, and a group of players that can also execute it when they get out on the pitch. Because back to your point, somebody within 1 to 15 is going to make a mistake somewhere, and it comes a turn around on it. So, that's what I said. People sometimes enjoy the mistake because it gives an opportunity to the opposition and a turnaround. But teams are making less and less of those mistakes.
Final question to you, and it's more of a comment actually. Just one of the viewers in here, Pádraig Hogan, just says, or Richard Hogan says, Pádraig Joyce must surely be happy with getting Comer back in the field. Like, Damien Comer's like a bit of a force of nature, isn't he? He's kind of a bit of a throwback as well, but he's so crucial to everything Galway do realistically. Yeah,
well, I suppose, if you look at yesterday, Shane Walsh was quiet, Comer was hot. We go back to the All-Ireland final last year. It was the other way around. His trick is, how does he get the two of them firing?
Yeah.
Has he got a game plan that can bring the two of them into the game at the same time? And if they get that balance right, they're going to cause a lot of problems. There's a sense if things click with Galway, and you throw Rob Finnerty and Matthew Tierney and Johnny Heaney and Peter Cook into the equation, and Ian Burke when he gets back fit again, that they could be very dangerous. But Terry, thanks a million for joining me. Well, you have something else to say? I'll let you say it. No, but I was going to go back to say what you said about all the other players. You see, it's how Galway can get that mix right. It's going to be the key thing to them. To have the players, but sometimes when you have two very strong players like that, you're trying to route your game through them. Is how you can bring the other fellas in on the back of that. And if Galway clicks that, I would make them favourites for the All-Ireland.
Really? Okay. It's that sort of fascinating year where you just need some team to step up 5 or 10%, and they could win All-Ireland. There's probably 5 or 6 of them that feel they can, I'd say.
Correct. And you see, when you only have the two stars, you're always going to be having the opposition. You can close off one of them. It's when they can get one of them two guys firing and everyone else working off the back of them, that they have to start to shift the lads around to mark them. I think then Galway will be going well.
Great stuff. Terry, thanks for taking time out of your working day. I really appreciate it. Good man.
Thank you.
Thanks a million. Bye. There's plenty of bits that still have to fly through. Back to the very start, there was obviously some sad news over the weekend with the passing of former GA President Dr. Mick Loftus. He died at the age of 93. He was a member of Mayo's last All-Ireland senior winning panel in 1951 during a 4-year senior career. The Crossmolina man Loftus, he also enjoyed a strong refereeing career, taking charge of 2 senior football finals in the 60s before entering GA administration. After chairing the Connacht Council, Loftus became GA President in 85, serving up until 87. I'd like to offer from all at our game, like to offer the Loftus family our deepest condolences. Just fly down through some other results as well. In the Joe McDonagh Cup, another really entertaining weekend in that competition. It just goes to show that when you put teams at the same level, you can have such an interesting competition. Offaly had a good win, 126 to 115 against Down. Owen Cattle top scored again in very, very impressive form. He'll probably make the GA team of the week yet again. He scored 112-7 from frees. He's in unstoppable form, as is Killian Kiley, who hit 5 points from play. That leaves Offaly in really good shape. I think they've won their last 10 games. They've played the last 7 weekends in a row. To get a week off now before the round 4. The round 4 ties come around. They're in really good spot, sitting on top of the table at 6 points. Kerry are also in decent shape as well. So it finished Kerry 117, Kildare 14 points. Jordan Conway made a big impact there coming off the bench. I think he got a goal that was essentially the difference maker. And it's mad how a year kind of has turned for Kildare. You know, they were going really well at half time of that Division 2A league final against Offaly, and you know, since losing that game, the wheels have come off somewhat. They obviously took a big hammering to Carlow in the first round, and they've been on the back foot ever since. So they're out of the action now. And I suppose what's key for them is there's probably a likelihood of them, the Down clash, the Down Kildare clash will obviously probably go a long way to see who stays up in Joe McDonagh or who goes down to Christy Ring. One of the games of the weekend was the Carlow-Laois game. That finished 122 apiece. Looked like Laois we're gonna take the points, but a late penalty from Marty Kavanagh saw Carlow snatch a share of the spoils. Picky Maher, Stephen Bergen and Martin Phelan were all in top form for Laois, but a strong finish there, and that goal from Mouse gave them a bit of a lifeline. So Carlow have draws now. They beat Kildare the first day, they drew at Kerry the last day, and they have a draw against Laois. They need to realistically beat Offaly if they want to get through to the final stages. But there's realistically 4 teams in the mix. Offaly in good shape, Kerry and Laois on the same points, 5, and Carlow on 4 points. So loads to play for there in the Joe McDonagh Cup. In the Christy Ring Cup, a big win for Tyrone, 222 to 117 against Mayo. A couple of other results as well. A huge win for Derry, 427 to Sligo's 213. Pretty surprising, to be honest with you, because Sligo had been very competitive up until that point. And probably one of the results of the weekend, Meath obviously had a bad weekend in football, but a bad weekend in hurling as well. It finished London 417, Meath 124. So when they played in the league, 2 late Jack Regan points broke London hearts when the sides met in the league in Ruislip a few weeks ago. But Kevin McMullen's side, Kevin McMullen's, as it's called here, the battling band of exiles, turned the tables this time to inflict the first defeat of the season on Saoirse Bulfin's side. Injury time scores from Ronan Crowley, formerly of Lancashire, and Jack Golding. Crowley's from Cork originally, but used to play with Lancashire, and Jack Golding used to play with Kerry. So London snatched a thrilling victory, and this was in McGovern Park in Ruislip as well. So that kind of hots things up a bit in the Christy Ring Cup. I think Meath were everyone's favourites, but London are after ripping up the script there a small bit. In the Nicky Rackard Cup round 2, Wicklow made very heavy weather of it, and from Annapup a really good test, but Wicklow eventually came out 114 to 112 winners up in Ederney. I think they'd be happy just to get over the line there. 2 late frees from their stalwart Christy Morehouse got them over the line. Roscommon and Louth finished Roscommon 5-8. Louth 117, so a 3-point win for Roscommon, despite being outscored 18 scores to 13. The old adage of goals winning games, huge for Roscommon there. And they've really turned things around this year under Seamus Coulter. They obviously won the Division 3A, and they're looking in good shape in the Nicky record. Another team that are in good shape are Donegal. They had a 320 to 116 win over Armagh in the Lorimar Cup. Cavan had a 216 to 19 points win over Monaghan. Lancashire, they continued their winning ways. They had a 415 to 115 win over Leitrim, and Longford had a 223 to 19 win over Warwickshire. In the under 20 hurling championship, Kilkenny were 2 points winners over Dublin. Finished Kilkenny 121, Dublin 216. That game was played as the curtain raiser to the Leinster Championship opener between Kilkenny and Westmeath in Nolan Park. Offaly went down, unfortunately, yesterday in the Leinster Minor Hurling Championship quarter final. Finished Kilkenny 215, Offaly 14 points. Really battling display in the Faithful Fields. Like, probably wasn't that much expected of the Offaly Minors this year. Only one. I think Caelan Larkin was the only one of the All Ireland Minor All Ireland Minor finalists. That's that team that basically carried over into this year. So and our under 20s had a good win over Kildare. I think it was double scores, 220 to 110 in Glenisco O'Connor Park on Friday. They play Galway this Saturday, which should be a belter of a Leinster quarter final. Just in football then, so really, really interesting. Offaly's win over the weekend and Down's win over the weekend means that Kildare and Cork are really looking over their shoulder. Kildare obviously playing Dublin in the Leinster final. They'd be, big underdogs to get through to the Leinster final and book their automatic place in the All-Ireland race. So if Offaly were to beat Louth, Kildare would drop to the Tailteann Cup because Offaly would be provincial finalists and would earn their place in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. If Offaly and Down were to win, that would see both Cork and Kildare go down to the Tailteann Cup. So it's kind of mad. We've never had it before where provincial championships have serious jeopardy for teams that are not in the province. So I think that's fascinating. Makes it really, really interesting. Just a question in from Joe Butler. Michael, is it correct to say that Offaly had no bar players on the minor side to loss to Kilkenny yesterday? We won on the squad, Peter Toohey, and we only had one on the squad last year, Ricky Fitzsimon. So that's disappointing. A couple of probably barren years in my own club, but we should have fairly strong representation over the coming years. Just to continue on in the football team, so just to go through a couple of other results. Obviously, we mentioned there with Terry, it was Galway 113, Roscommon 1-9. Damien Comer was in sensational form. He finished with 1-4. Kieran Murta was actually awarded the Man of the Match award for Roscommon. He was just brilliant. It was a one-man scoring machine. He finished with 1-6, 3 frees. Roscommon going to the All-Ireland stages now. Obviously have a win over Mayo already to show for themselves. Sligo ended the fairy tale of New York. It finished Sligo 216, New York 6 points. This is really impressive from Tony McEntee's side. New York were never really in it. It's horrible conditions up in Markovich Park, but a really, really dominant display from Sligo, who now earned their place in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship as well. And I know I was chatting to Pat Spillane Jr. There's a chance that Sligo could end up playing his native Kerry, and he said his father Pat, who obviously we know and love from the Sunday game, and some hate from the Sunday game, he said there was no doubt about it if they play Kerry in the All-Ireland stages that his dad would be shouting for Sligo because he's gone all in on the team that his son is now representing. But Patrick O'Connor was very good for Sligo. He ended up with 2-1. Niall Murphy, one of their main marksmen, kicked 5 points as well, 2 free. Sean Carabine 3 points, and Pat Spillane Jr. kicked 2 along with Keane Lally. Sligo have been tipping away nicely. Obviously have promotion from Division 4 already under their belts, and now a provincial final place. Peculiarly enough, they beat 2 teams that don't reside in the island of Ireland in London and New York to get to a provincial final. I'm not sure if that's ever happened before. I mentioned it briefly there as well. Finished Offaly 111, Meath 10 points. Just a huge win for Martin Murphy's Charges. Real emotionally fueled afternoon in Glenisco O'Connor Park. And it was just brilliant performance. I probably probably saw an opportunity for Offaly there, but I didn't know whether they'd be able to take it. Meath have obviously been seriously underperforming this year, but Offaly seized the opportunity with both hands. The blistering start really set the tone for this. They were 4 points to no score up after the first quarter. As I said earlier, held Meath scoreless until the 23rd minute. A minute before that, Rory Egan beavered through, belted a lovely goal to the net. It was very like Ryan O'Toole's goal for Monaghan the week before. And we're going to Croke Park on Sunday, which is going to be brilliant. And, you know, with due respect to Louth, we're going to Croke Park and we're not facing a superpower. You know, we're not coming up against Dublin. We have if things were to go right, we have a realistic chance of getting to a Leinster final. And we've conceded small enough tallies in our last 2 games. We haven't scored a hell of a lot. We've scored 112 against Longford, 111 against Meath. We conceded 111 against Longford, and we conceded 10 points against Meath. And the backbone or the foundations of the victory yesterday were in defence. Declan Hogan was outstanding. Rory Egan, who's probably going to miss the game this weekend, he came off a half time after nipping his hamstring. I think he had a grade 1 tear. Be amazed if he's back for this weekend. Bernard Allen's going to be under pressure as well. He came in off the bench as he has been. The Panda, he had a point kicked with his first touch after 20 seconds, but came down awkwardly on, not sure if it was his knee or his ankle, but he had to be carried off a couple of minutes later. He's going to be under pressure for the weekend. Just a word on Peter Cunningham as well. He was married in Rome the Friday before last, had the honeymoon for a week and came back on Saturday to play this game. He was brilliant at centre back. And another word for Nigel Dunn as well, who would be friendly enough with. He was off the panel for 4 years under John Mahan. It'd be fair to say they had a disagreement, and he didn't kick football, and he thought his footballing career, his county career, was over at 29, and he's going to Croke Park next Sunday at 33. So he was a happy man yesterday. Dublin had a comprehensive win over Laois, finished 4-30 to 2-9. I don't think, to the best of my knowledge, that Dublin have racked up 30 white flags in a game before, not in the Leinster Championship, to the best of my recollection. Conor Callan did it up with 1-7. 2 marks and 1 point from a free. Colin Pascal got 1-5, taking an opportunity there big time. Kieran Kilkenny hasn't scored much in games so far this year, but he was brilliant the other day. Kicked 1-4. Brian Fenton and Dean Rock with 3 points apiece, along with Paul Mannion. So good to get Paul Mannion back on the field there as well. For Laois, Owen Lowry was very, very good, but they probably struggled outside of him. He finished with 2-1, but it was a really kind of a chasing afternoon for the O'Moore men. There's no point in saying any differently. Mentioned earlier about Offaly playing Louth in the semi-final, so the revolution in Louth continues under Mickey Hart. It finished Louth 2-10 to Westmeath's 1-11. Westmeath will be really disappointed here. They were 1-9 to 4 points up at half time, looked in cruise control. Something similar happened in their league game against Down earlier on this year, and they ended up a massive deficit at half time, ended up being overturned by Down. This would be really disappointing for Desi Dolan. There's no point in saying any different from a Louth point of view. They have Sam Mulroy back. He kicked 1-4, 4 frees, and the goal was a penalty. Conor Grimes, very, very good as well. From Westmeath's point of view, Ronan O'Toole kicked 1-1. John Heslin got 3 points, 2 frees. Luke Loughlin, 3 points. But Westmeath are heading, I was going to say they're heading for the Tailteann Cup, but they're not, because they were Tailteann Cup winners last year. They're still going to be in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. But that's disappointing, and they're probably going to have 3 or 4 weeks to lick their wounds before that game. Mentioned about Down defeating Donegal earlier. Donegal's miserable season continues to finish Down 2-13. Donegal 1-11. Pat Havern with 1-3. Ryan Johnson with 3 points as well. Liam Kerr with a goal too. Fairness to Conor Laverty, he's gotten an immediate bounce since he stepped into the breach there and Down. They were in disarray this time last year, and now the wheels have fairly turned. Donegal's are the ones in disarray. Still in the All-Ireland Football Championship, whereas unless Down book their provincial final place and they're playing Armagh next day, they're actually going to be in the Tailteann Cup, so they'll be one of the better teams in the Tailteann Cup, along with Meath as well, obviously. And Colin O'Rourke made no bones about saying that Meath are exactly where they deserve to be, been in the Tailteann Cup. They were just really disappointing yesterday. They were totally left in the blocks, only for Jason Scully and Ronan Jones coming on off of the bench. They probably would have been beaten by a lot more. For Offaly were probably holding on in one sense at the end, but they kind of had them at arm's length as well. Mentioned with Terry there, it finished in the Ulster Senior Football Championship quarter-final, finished Armagh 1-14, Cavan 12 points, Paddy Lynch, who's definitely becoming one of the better forwards in the country, ended up with 4 points. Gerard McKiernan, as he always does, kicked 3 points as well. From an Armagh point of view, Conor Turbett stepped into the breach in Rian O'Neill's absence. He kicked 7 points, 3 from frees. Ethan Rafferty stepped forward to kick a point as well. Did a good few scores on the board, and I think Armagh anything other than a provincial final place for Armagh would be a disappointment this year. In the Munster Senior Football Championship, I know Colin Collins is a happy man this morning. Bit of redemption. They were gutted last year when Limerick beat them on penalties, but after beating Cork in the first round, they followed it through really, really importantly and built on that big quarter-final win over Cork. It was nervy enough. It finished Clare 116, Limerick 16 points. For the first time in Colin Collins' 10-season reign, Clare have reached the final of the Munster Championship. They were last part of that day in 2012. For Limerick, they have no competitive win in 49 weeks. It'll be gone past the year mark by the time their first Tailteann Cup journey throws in. So after making unbelievable progress under Billy Lee, things didn't end well for Ray Dempsey there, and they were obviously defeated the other day. But I'd say plenty of credit in defeat and probably one of their better performances of the season so far. So Clare have already proposed that the Munster Senior Football Final against Kerry be played at Cusack Park in Ennis. There's no home and away final arrangement exists between the counties, with the last three Clare Kerry Munster football finals, which were played 2000, 1997 and 92, played at the Gaelic grounds in Limerick. Clare officials have already approached their counterparts in Munster and Kerry about the possibility of the Sunday the May 7th decider taking place in Ennis. If their request is acceded to, Clare will travel to Fitzgerald Stadium, Killarney the next time to qualify for a Munster Senior final against the Kingdom. I don't know if that will be agreed to, but it would be great for Clare to have home advantage for that final. Definitely would. And it would, not that it's going to level the playing field that much, but it would probably increase their chances of being competitive at least. For Clare, Keelan Sexton was brilliant again. He kicked 1-4. Owen Cleary with 4 points. Emmett McMahon kicked 2 points as well. Interestingly, Gary Brennan was actually part of the Clare hurling setup yesterday. Not 100% sure of his role, but obviously a footballing legend within the county. Interesting to see him. He obviously knows his hurling pretty well from his exploits with Ballyea. Just on that Cusack Park thing for the Munster final as well. The capacity of Cusack Park stands at 18,500. The last Munster final to attract an attendance bigger than that figure was the almost 28,000 crowd that watched the 2018 decider between Cork and Kerry at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. I don't see Kerry travelling in massive numbers. Maybe I'm mad. I don't see them travelling in huge numbers for that. Clare will bring a decent crowd, and it will bring an even bigger crowd, particularly if it's on home soil. Just a question in there from Porter. Tip football, ? Dyer this year. Yeah, they've been poor this year. There's probably a few caveats to it. Two of their best players are playing with New York in Bill Maher and Alan Campbell, and obviously Conor Sweeney is out with the cruciate, which is, to try and overcome the absence of a player like that is always going to be very difficult. He's one of the best forwards in the country, let alone being, the best forward in Tipperary. And obviously Michael Quinlan, another one of their better players, not involved this year either. Just fly through that result. So finished Kerry 25 points, Tipperary 5 points. There's probably an element of containment to this from a Tipperary point of view and trying not to concede goals. But this was a non-event really from start to finish. Sean O'Shea kicked 7 points, 5 frees. Tony Brosnan did his search for a starting jersey, no harm, kicking 5 points. Thomas Sullivan came forward from cornerback to kick 2 points. David Clifford was actually head scorers. There was a great picture doing the rounds online about this is the definition of being double marked. One lad up on top of his back and a lad standing directly in front of me. He's basically like the meat and the sandwich. And from the few highlights we saw, they didn't give him too much space to operate in anyway. But that is all the action after a busy weekend. Brilliant to have the Munster Hurling and Leinster Championships in full flow, and great to have Offaly making a big win as well in the Leinster Football Championship. Shane will be back on Thursday. He's actually over in the Crucible, would you believe? I envy him. I've been over there several times. It's one of the best sporting venues in the world, and I have to say a big thank you to everybody that showed out in Rowan Moore the other night. We had our first OurGame live fundraiser. The crack was Rowan, it's fair to say, from Michael Brick Welch and Shane Dowling. And we'd, big funds raised for the Rowan Moore GA club there. Feel free, and we'd love to have get other clubs involved. Lots of big games coming up. It was an Up for the Clash kind of show that we did in Rowan Moore ahead of the Limerick and Waterford game. If your club is looking to do something similar, just email events@ourgame.ie. We'd only we'd only love to come down to your club and raise some valuable funds for your club. Today's show as well was brought to you, as always, every Monday by OurGameSupporters.com. All your best retro jerseys, whether it's Tipperary, Galway, Wexford, Kilkenny, you name it, or this lovely jersey, the Offaly jersey that I have on. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off at OurGameSupporters.com. That's all we have time for on this week's show, folks. Thanks a million for joining me. We'll be back on Thursday. Shane will be back. No doubt his head will be even bigger than normal, with given that Tipperary won at the weekend. And we'll have Galway legend Damien Hayes on the show as well. Thanks a million, folks. We will see you all on Thursday. And stay well, and we'll talk to you all soon.